I'm ready.
I'd like to introduce Yuriko Narita. Yuriko is a certified master KonMari home organizer who specializes in clearing physical and mental clutter. Her services remove barriers which keep people from living their ideal life. She's based in Reading, Pennsylvania and Bowie, Maryland. And after reading Marie Kondo's books, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up and Spark and Joy, Yuriko attended Marie Kondo's first ever U.S. consultant training seminar in New York City. After tidying, she was inspired to start her own business, Joy and Space LLC, and to complete her yoga teacher training. The KonMari method helped her to make space for amazing opportunities in her life, and she uses the background of her MS in psychology degree and her expertise in coaching individuals with ADHD and other forms of chronic disorganization to bring transformation and joy into her clients' lives. Welcome, Yuriko. It's a pleasure having you here this afternoon to speak with us about how Marie Kondo has inspired your life to make changes.
Thanks, Colleen. It's a joy to be here. I'm excited.
Well, I wanted to ask you a few questions, if that's okay. The first one being, what did you think about Kondo's ideas that your belongings should spark joy for you to keep them?
Obviously I'm biased because I'm certified in her method. But I really love this concept of and the larger concept is only choosing to keep the things that bring joy into your life, right? That spark joy for you. So it really is this intentional choice. The whole process is intentionally choosing this item brings me joy, this item does not. And something I do with my clients is really talk to them about their personal joy sparking questions. Um, one of the one that speaks the most to me is, does this item speak to your heart? And so really getting in tune with what are your personal values? What do you want to have in your space in your life? And then making that an intentional choice.
And why do you think it is that Americans have so many things? Do you think it like relates back to when people were saving after the Depression, the more money leading to more buying of more items? What do you think caused that to happen?
Um, there are so many possibilities, right? But I really think it's because we have too much stress in our American lives. I really think that we often engage in retail therapy, and it's easier to buy a new thing than it is to find something in your house. When you go
Very,
to the store, yeah,
yeah.
the shelves of the store are organized, they're beautiful. It's easy to find something. In your house, often it can be like an epic quest to find a thing. Yeah.
That's very true. I completely agree. I had a little bit of an issue with Amazon during COVID, so
Right.
it comes right to your door in 24 hours.
Exactly. Instead of you having to look around for it, you just order another one. And unfortunately, and I know I have a couple Instagram posts, and it's also on my Pinterest as well. This graphic about the cycle of clutter. And I really believe that the cycle of clutter is stress based, but we often engage in it. And so we see the things in our home, and it often relates to buying organizational products, right? We see the things in our home and we're like, oh my goodness, I really need to get organized. So you go and you buy some more organizational tools, right? And then you get home and you realize, okay, now I've taken all this stuff out. I've used my organizational tool, but now it's not working that well. So then you start to feel down on yourself and sad, and the cycle just continues, and then you buy another thing and it just keeps going and going. I really believe it's stress.
I agree with you as well. And that leads me to my next question is to what do you think the most challenging thing is to organize in your home and what strategies work best to eliminate clutter?
Yeah, I think so. The KonMari method goes in order from easiest to hardest. And so in the method, it says clothes are the easiest. That's the first category to start with. And then sentimental is the hardest category, the last category. So sentimental things are things like photos, journals that you've written in. For my clients who have kids, it's like their kids' toys, the baby book that maybe was started and never completed, all of those fun things, right? Which everyone has one of these. we should stop feeling guilty about this. We all have the baby book that nobody finished, right? Like it's a thing. And as I often say to my clients, like if you want to feel guilty about it, it's totally fine, but maybe consider letting the guilt go. But I actually believe that in addition to the sentimental category being the hardest, the second hardest in American homes is paper. And so in the KonMari method, that's actually the third category. So it's supposed to be clothes, books, then paper. I have One of the ways I modify the method to meet my clients' needs is often we make paper the second to last category. So often paper comes right before sentimental because we have so much paper. You know, mail comes into our homes 6 out of the 7 days a week, and it does not stop flowing in. Even though we're more and more digital, we still have a tremendous amount of paper. So I think that's the second hardest category for most people to get rid of.
Yeah, and you were talking about the personal items, and how do you detach yourself from something that's sentimental to just so you can get to the point where you could say, I really don't need this. This is a moment in time many years ago. How do I get rid of it?
Yeah, yeah. It is about, first off, because in the method, you work yourself up from easiest to hardest in the categories. You build tidying skills. It's kind of like you're building a muscle as you would, like if you were working out or if you were going to run a marathon, you wouldn't just start with, okay, I've never run before. I'm going to go run 26.2 miles, right? So you
Yeah.
build these tidying skills so that way you have some help and good and internal help and support, right? When you get to that hardest category. But once you get there, I think it's so important to spend time. And I am okay talking to myself, but many people aren't. So maybe it's better to journal for many people. I also really love journaling, and spend time really thinking about either talking it through, writing it down, like, here are my thoughts about this thing. And so an example of mine is anything that my father gives me, I really feel the need to keep. And it's a problem because he gave me it was a lovely idea, right? It's this figurine that's supposed to be a wine holder, but it was shaped like a golden retriever because I also have a
Oh.
golden retriever. Yeah. And it was kind of cute, right? Because it looked like the golden was like drinking the wine, but it was also quite ridiculous, right? And I was like, I can't keep this. This does not go with anything in my home. It's just not my style. So I had to spend time talking to this item and saying, like, I recognize that my dad gave this to me. It was like he thought about it. He knows I love Goldens. He knows I like wine. It's a really cute idea. And yet this thing is not for me, right? So I had to still thank the item. And that's part of our letting go process in the KonMari method is to thank each item that we let go of. And again, that builds skills, but then also go beyond just thanking, right? Like recognize that you really do appreciate the person who gave you these things. And a lot of times it's just not appropriate. Like I did not call my dad and tell him I was getting rid of this thing. It just doesn't seem, it seems kind of inconsiderate. But to still take that moment internally and thank that person who gave you that item and then let it go with that sense of gratitude.
I agree. And you also do a lot with how decluttering changes your life to make it more manageable. I remember a while back we were on a Zoom class and you talked about just simplifying your kitchen. That was one example that you gave. How can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So decluttering just makes it easier for you to find things, right? So in the kitchen, we all have, and I no longer have a junk drawer, right? But most of us have a junk drawer. I had one before I did my KonMari tidying. And when you think about, you want all that stuff in that junk drawer, you're keeping it all so it's handy and so you can get something out that you need quickly, right? Like you really need a twisty tie. You want your twisty ties right there. There are so many twisty ties in the drawer that you can't find one. You can't even find two of them because they're all like, right. So when we spend the time to empty out the drawer, to truly choose what do you want to keep, right? So it really sounds silly, but you take out all the twisty ties and you ask yourself, like, which twisty ties do I actually like? It amazes me. Like, we all really do have a personal opinion about things like hangers and twisty ties. Some people like the ones that have that plastic coating. Other people like the ones with the paper and wax coat. People have feelings about all sorts of things, right? So you figure out what are my favorite types of twisty ties? Maybe it's a certain color that you want because it's easy to find it. And then you set it in something. So sometimes I like to just use what's already on hand. So sometimes I've used like little shot glasses, right? Because they already fit in the drawer. Or we've used other boxes that we found for something else. And that's where the twisty ties live. So by reducing the quantity and creating space for the things that you want to keep in that junk drawer or any other space in the home, then you can find what you're looking for later. And you're no longer struggling. Like all those little moments of struggle add up to stress. And by the time you get to the end of your day, you're just sort of like, I am exhausted. You know, sometimes we're exhausted and we haven't even left the house. And it's because your brain was constantly trying to find things. And that just leads to a level of exhaustion and tiredness.
And disorganization,
Yes.
because I myself am dyslexic, but I know a lot of people who do have attention deficit hyperactive disorder or ADHD, and they have severe disorganization. And how do you help them get organized?
Yeah, so I find it really important to, when working with anybody who is, neurodivergent, to get a good sense of what are your habits that are already existing. So one of the things I really like to do with my clients is to have them walk me through their typical day, meaning like when you leave the home to like, if you leave the home to go to work, show me like what your process is to leave the home, right? Like from waking up and I'm looking at like where are all the visual points of focus for you throughout your morning as you're getting ready to leave for the day. And then the same thing when you come home, like what door do you come into? And then I'm looking to see like, well, if you're coming into the garage, when you get out of your car, what do you see the first thing that you get out? As soon as you get in that garage, if you see a whole bunch of stuff, and I often refer to having ADD and ADHD as having a very busy brain, right? So you take a brain that's already doing so many things, coming up with so many amazing ideas, and then you add a significant amount of visual stimuli, that poor brain is tired before it's even left the car, right?
Right.
And and then you might forget the groceries that are in the back of the car
Yes.
because you've already seen 10 things that you need to do and you haven't even entered the main part of the house yet. So I really do try to minimize visual clutter as much as possible for my clients because that just again sets up that cycle of clutter. So trying to reduce the amount of things that you have to visually process, I think, is a real key for many individuals with who are neurodivergent.
And we talked about this briefly before, with struggling with the idea of throwing something away, or how you interpret that as donating items versus throwing something away. Which is more preferable to you?
So I still struggle with throwing things away. Honestly, before this phone call, I was looking for a portable vacuum, and I know that I have a plug-in portable vacuum. But I knew that we also had one that is rechargeable, a cordless one. And I was asking my husband, like, look, here's this thing, this cord, it goes to something. Did you throw out this other vacuum? And he said, yeah, I thought I did. So I went down into our basement where the other vacuum that is corded is. And I found that one right away. And sure enough, because I like to tidy things, I had put the other vacuum right next to it. So when you store what like with like, that really makes your life easier. So that was great. I found it. But I had already thrown away because my husband told me that he had thrown away the other vacuum. So I had already thrown away the cord. So I was just like, okay, fine. Let me get this cord. And that was hard for me, right? Just because
Right.
I'm like, well, should I donate this cord? Like maybe this cord is useful to someone. And you have to remember that like the donation site is not going to be able to sell that item if it doesn't have the other things that go with it. So donating it, even though it sounds like a nice idea, is in many ways making work for another person. So I decided to throw it out. And then I found the rest of the vacuum. And so I took the cord back out of the trash can. I put it with the rest of the vacuum, and now it is ready to be donated. So and my junior league in Reading is about to have a nice little yard sale to raise money. So it's going to go there. So I already know where it's going, which is great. But it can be really difficult to throw things out. I think but a lot of times it's just this item is no longer useful. And if you donate it, they're probably going to throw it out as well. So I still thanked that cord before I put it in the trash can. I said, thank you, cord. And I threw it away. And that gratitude practice really helps me to throw things out.
I wish I had known that many years ago myself, because I do struggle with that as well. My mom called me a pack rat when I was younger. I'm not that way anymore, but it took me for a long time to figure out how to do that actual method of deciding whether or not to donate or to keep it or to toss it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know, like, um, you also are a yoga instructor. And I wanted to know if there was any correlation in becoming a yoga instructor to Marie Kondo's way of life, or was that something totally separate?
They technically are separate, but they were things that I did at the same point in my life. Like I was going through my yoga teacher training process as well as learning to become a certified KonMari consultant at about the same time. So for me in my life, they're very connected. It was just part of my journey that I was on, which was leading a more intentional life. I was working in higher education. I worked with students with disabilities. I ran that office and, provided not IEPs at the college level, but all of those accommodations. And even though it's a really great group of students to work with, the job was just too stressful for me. And I decided that I wanted to make a big change in my life. And I've always been very interested in helping people. And I had practiced yoga. I went back to my yoga practice in 2010, 2011. So I had been practicing yoga for a while, and then I finally decided to become a yoga teacher. And they're both processes of transformation. I really do believe no matter whatever form of yoga that you practice, I think yoga can truly be this transformative process that allows you to get curious about yourself, to stop, focusing on all these other things around you, and just to take a moment to pause and focus on what's going on inside of you, and how you're feeling that day, and then how you're feeling that day starts to impact other people. And to me, the KonMari method parallels that so much because it is a process of introspection. It is this process of taking care of what's in your home, taking care of yourself, so that way you can show up in the outside world and to friends and family in a much more generative and supportive way.
Beautiful way to look at it. And I was wondering about the correlation because they both represent peace to me in the end, and joy and happiness for all that matters. And I have not yet tried yoga enough, but I think I'm going to do that based on what you've told me. I think it can help me with my lupus journey as well. I wanted to ask you, is there a website that you can link us to learn more about Marie Kondo's methods of decluttering, or for your yoga teaching as well?
Yeah, so I have a lot of information on my website, joyandspace.com. I have a blog post that has, I try to keep my blog as a place that provides really helpful and useful information to people. Um, I want to help my clients tidy at any stage of their process. So that means if if someone wants to work with me and they really want to DIY, I'm available for what I call tidy coaching or short virtual sessions that are just an hour. And we can break that hour up so that way it's a half an hour call at the beginning of your tidying time and a half an hour call at the end. So you can tidy independently. And then we can chat about, like, here's your goal, how did it go, what were the barriers? And I try to set my blog up in a way that's very supportive for anyone. So whether you're working with me or not, my blog has a lot of information. I've got freebies on my website, which again is joy and space, the word and spelled out.com. Freebies on my website that you can download, such as like a KonMari checklist, so you can do the method on your own and just check things through. I have a values worksheet. So if you're not, sometimes a big challenge for people is understanding, what do I want my ideal life to be? That's really the first part of the method, is determining what should my ideal lifestyle be. And I have information on my blog about that, as well as this values worksheet that people can download for free and then, work through on their own. Here are my values. This is what I really want in my home. And then next step, download the free KonMari checklist and start going. So yeah, hopefully my website is a great resource, but then Marie Kondo also has her own website as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here to share with us an important lesson about bringing happiness into your life by decluttering and finding peace. It was such a pleasure to speak with you today.
You
Thank you,
too,
Rico.
Colleen. It's always fun to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
You too.